Today with the CanAm build, we got a couple different things going on. We've got the dash. The dash is pretty much fully built, and we've got all of our electronic components in here already, right? So we've got the radio, we have the SWITCHPRO's 8-gauge cluster, and then we have the car-to-car. So what we've kind of decided to do here, so Steve is wiring all this stuff over here. So there's Steve right there. He's just working away. And the SWITCHPRO's has this like a controller, right? What do they call this guy? The switch panel, right? So we're gonna mount the switch panel up inside here. This is what takes the power wire, and then all the loads run through this component. So we're mounting this between the rear seats in this 4-seater car. It'll be underneath this center console apparatus. It's gonna be covered, right? So the SWITCHPRO's is just like, basically like a small gang of wires right here. It comes in from the SWITCHPRO's switch up on the dash that you just saw. And then here's all of our outputs. So all of our outputs come out, and we're gonna run upper lights, lower lights, buggy whip lights, one switch per buggy whip for 2 whips total. What else are we doing, Steve?
2 whips, remote start, and then the reverse light on the back.
Okay, yeah, so the SWITCHPRO's is Bluetooth compatible. So you could have your phone, you could like push the button on your phone, right? And it syncs up to the phone. So we're gonna have the start feature through the SWITCHPRO's. So I'll be able to start the car and warm the turbo up, say, for 2 minutes before I get in the car. Same thing with all the lights and all the other lighting and all that stuff. It can all be Bluetooth compatible from my phone. Our custom SWITCHPRO seat frame, we're gonna make this into an H-frame so we can put our 5th harness point down through here with a bung welded in, and then we'll have a full 5-point harness. You can see over there on the passenger side, we've cut the factory bracketry off and we welded our own brackets on. And then we made this frame system. This frame system will have the same thing, so we're gonna have an H-bar running across for the lower, the submarine mount they call it, the crotch strap. We'll do the same thing with the rears. That'll be the SWITCHPRO seat setup. To recap, these are the lights. We got 3 LP6s down here and 5 LP9s up there. All of our main wiring runs, well, first the wires are all pulled through the frame. So we got wires coming down right there. We've got wires coming out the back of the cage for the whips, the radio antenna for the Lowrance, and then we're gonna run this Lowrance antenna down through here. So there's an FM radio antenna and then also a GPS antenna. We've got all of our wiring coming along the center rail down here, and this is a factory unit that is the positive feed and the ignition on for the car. So we've used this as ignition on and positive feed. Here's a fuse block that's going to power these relays. The SWITCHPRO's unit has 8 different switches. 4 of the switches can power a 35 amp circuit. The other 4 circuits can power a 20 amp circuit. These lights draw 9 amps a piece. So if I turn all 5 of these on, we have a 45 amp draw, which is pretty big. The SWITCHPRO's safely can't turn all of those on with one switch. I want these on all the time. I don't want 1 of these on or 2 of these on or 3 of these on. I want 5 of these on. So one switch is gonna operate all 5. We've split the circuit from SWITCHPRO's to run that on 2 relays. We have 3 relays right here. 1 relay, well, we'll get to the 1 in a second. The 2 relays operate on 1 switch on the SWITCHPRO, all 5 LP9s. So 1 switch, 2 relays, 1 fuse. That's the proper way to wire and run a circuit so you don't overdraw too much current on 1 switch. So that's how we're turning these guys on. The lower units are on one of the 35 amp SWITCHPRO's brain, because that draws less than 35 amps. So that's going to take one 35 amp SWITCHPRO gang slot. We did not put a relay to the front lights because we don't need to, because the SWITCHPROs can handle that. So there's 8 lights. All of the LP6s and the LP9s have a backlit running light. It's a little yellow, nice dim light. It's like a daytime running lamp. Steve, did we know how much those drew?
The SWITCHPRO has the circuit to run up to 35 amps. Because we want them on every time ignition is on, it comes from the ignition feed down on the junction
To the relay, okay.
to the relay, and the relay then is what's going to power
Perfect.
the 8 lights.
Okay, so what we did is we broke that circuit down. So all of the 8 running lights come on all at once as soon as the ignition's on. We ran it on this other relay down here. So there was 3 relays down in that junction box, in the junction box that we made. One of those relays powers all 8 running lights by just turning the ignition on. And that way this car has plenty of front visibility. So if somebody is coming at me, if somebody's looking at me in their rearview mirror or whatever, they'll be able to see the car with 8 running lights. My kid follows me on his quad, my son and daughter. And so what they can do is they can actually ride in front of me, and then they can take a quick glance back and see that there's 8 yellow lights, yellow driving lights coming at them. So it's just easier for them to identify who I am. Steve, what else runs on the SWITCHPRO?
Separated each whip, so they'll be independent.
Okay,
So you'll have a whip both on when you're driving. If you're just at hill stops, you can just run one whip and keep the current draw down. We also are running on the RTL on the rear light bar. We're running the white light, could be used also for visibility. Backing up will be on its own switch.
Okay, so the RTL, so we have the RTL going on this car, and it's got an amber light, a red light, and one white light. So an amber and red on each side, and then one white light. The white light is going to be on one of the SWITCHPROs. So we're gonna power the white light on with that. We're gonna power the rest of the RTL with running. So when the ignition is on or the key's on, it's just gonna turn the amber and the red light on. There's also a brake light on this car, so it's gonna get brake light input from the factory brake light. It's just gonna go right up to the RTL and turn the brake light on. So it has a dual battery mount underneath the right rear seat, plus a larger battery mount for where the factory location is. So we added this larger battery. Then I was going to put 2 batteries in here, one here and one here. There's still a place for it, but I picked this battery up and it weighed way too much. It was very heavy. So I was like, should I put 2 of those in there? If I put 2 of those batteries in, it's just gonna weigh the car down too much. So that little battery weighs a lot. It's a lot more than what it looks like. So what we've done here is there's an on-off switch right here. So real easy to access and grab once the seats are in. I'm gonna be able to come in right here. So when it's in storage, I can turn both batteries off. I could run it on one battery if I wanted to, which I don't see why I would, or I can run it on both batteries at the same time, which that's where I'm normally gonna run this car. Then there's an isolator. So the isolator isolates the battery with the ignition off. So if I want to stop on the top of Lights Out Hill, or what everybody calls it, Sunset Hill or whatever, in Glamis, I can turn the ignition off. It's gonna kill the power output from one battery, and it will take it from another battery, whichever one we chose. Steve, which one did we choose to kill?
We still kept this as the main battery.
Okay, so this is our main battery.
This will always be your start battery because that's what powers the accessories. This, if you don't use your override switch, this was still going to isolate the 2 batteries. And we're pulling from the accessory battery. That's where we're powering your radio, your GPS, the Kenwood radio. We're making this today to make if you leave that going on, and you're
okay,
on
so
there, and you're parked, and you're on there, this will pull power, and it won't pull from your starting battery, so it won't leave you stranded.
okay, cool. So when we shut the car off, this isolator kills this battery.
Yeah, and
Okay.
your pull is going to come from this, even if you don't flip your switch.
Got it. So the switch is going to remain in both positions. I'm not going to touch that. I'm really probably never going to use this except for when I park it in the summer and I turn it off, and I just want the entire car to be off. So when we kill the ignitions, turn the engine off, I will pull all my accessories. I don't run a stereo. I don't listen to loud music from the outside. I only listen to it in my headphones. But there's going to be, I could still have the radio on, the Kenwood radio for communication. I can still have the Lowrance on to see where I'm at if I wanted to see that. And then I can have individual whip lights on. I can also have individual front lights on just for a visual. That's all going to pull off of this battery for as long as I want it to. I could basically wipe this battery completely out if I wanted to. Then when I want to go start the car after it's been sitting for a little while, it turns, this isolator sees the input and it turns both batteries on, and it's basically like this one's jump starting this one if I ran it all the way down, which I'm not actually going to do that, but that's what this isolator does. So when I stop and everything's still on, I'm not worried about not being able to restart it because I've worn the battery all the way out. So we got a bunch of wiring run pulls. This is for one of the whips right here. There's a wire, is this pulled through? Oh no, you're going down low on that one.
This is pulled through. This is for your dome lights that had to come up, over, and right.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about the dome lights. We'll talk about the dome lights later. And then this is for the RTL, right?
Correct.
And the other whip light.
Yep.
So he had to pull all this down. Did all that come down the center tube, or that was just the dome light?
That all that main wiring came down the driver's side tube, which we used that whole channel pretty much. These guys and dome antenna came down this path.
Oh yeah, because we didn't want to have that
from here all the home run down to the front.
Okay, cool. And then so you had a problem with the dome light yesterday, right? Because you were trying to. What were you having a problem with trying to get from one side to the other?
Well, when you're kind of going in blind into a tube and trying to make a 90-degree turn, you can't really get it. It's not like a house in the driveway you can cut and patch.
Yeah.
On a cave. And so with the scope, we were able to go in there and see what was going on. And so when I came in here, I could get a visual, which isn't the best right now, but in through this pipe to this end. And I was able to run one wire feed with a knot at the end and use this to bring another one in and catch it with a hook and then pull that feed through.
So you're kind of like you were like feeding that down like a camera, and then you were fishing a hook down there, and you're just kind of watching
to see
what was happening inside there. Oh, that's pretty cool.
And there's no way that I see that there was any way you could do this job without this tool. Otherwise, we'd have ran zip ties along this frame, and that's not the look we were going for.
So part of the pull that Steve was pulling across into there was these dome lights. So this dome light goes down this tube and then makes a left inside that tube, and that's why he had to use the scope to go grab that two wires. So there's two sets of dome lights. There's one here and then there's one there. And then we're gonna do a really cool thing to turn them on, which you'll see in a different video. We're gonna actually use a dome light switch very similar to a car, but it's gonna be a magnetic pickup feed. And when either of the front doors close, it's gonna come into contact, the magnet's gonna come into contact, and it's gonna turn the light off. When it opens, the magnet's gonna pull off, it's gonna turn the switch on, and then the dome lights are gonna turn on, just like how it is in a car. That way we don't have to get into a dark car and then turn a light on, reach over our head, do all that kind of stuff. So when you want to turn a dome light on, all you do from inside the car is just open it like that. The turbo's getting complete. A couple little hiccups there. We didn't get the studs in the kit that hold the turbo onto the manifold. So what we did is we shortened the bolts, but then we found out that we shouldn't have shortened the bolts. So we're going to pull that turbo back off and put studs that are coming from Packard in. Exhaust looks pretty nice. It's a just a muffler with this nice little hand cone tailpipe. I love hand coned anything exhaust. It just looks really cool. Right here we have the clutches. The clutches are both removed from the car. This is the clutch that goes on the crankshaft. This is the primary clutch. This is the secondary clutch. This is the plate that you release when you go to change a belt out there in the middle of the desert. You spin a threaded rod into here, and you could, by whatever means, there's a bunch of different tools that can do it. I have one of those quick release ones, and it opens this plate up. Anyways, this is going to be on a floating hub now. As this clutch changes its pitch through RPM, as this comes in and out to change the final gear ratio of the belt, this clutch over here used to be stationary, mounted stationary on the transmission. Now it's going to float in and out. And what we're doing is we're reducing the side load of the belt. So as the belt has side load applied to it, the belt overheats, blows up, and it grenades inside the belt housing. That's not good. So hopefully now I'll be able to get more than 250 miles out of a belt. So this is getting sent out to KWI Clutches, and they're out of Illinois. And we're gonna have both of these pieces modified. And that's it, put them back in the car and see what kind of belt life we can get.